Marcus thought he had the next big idea. 8 months later, the doors were shut and $2.3 million had vanished. What went wrong? Have you ever been absolutely certain you were right about something, only to watch it all crumble before your eyes? Today, I want to tell you about Marcus Chen, a man who lost $2.3 million in 8 months, not because he wasn't smart, but because he forgot one of the most fundamental truths about success. This is a story about pride, fall, and the humbling journey back to the top. It's about how sometimes losing everything is exactly what we need to find ourselves. And I guarantee you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at failure the same way again. Picture this. San Francisco, 2019. Marcus Chen is sitting in his sleek downtown office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Bay Bridge, wearing a custom-tailored navy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 34, he had already built and sold 2 successful tech startups. The first, a project management app, sold for $8 million. The second, a logistics platform, went for $12 million. Marcus wasn't just wealthy, he was brilliant. MIT graduate, Forbes 30 under 30 alumni, the kind of guy who could walk into any room and command attention with his ideas. He had what everyone in Silicon Valley craved, the golden touch. But success, as you'll see, can be a dangerous drug. "I'm going to revolutionize dining," Marcus told his assistant that morning, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never truly failed. Think about it. Why should people have to wait for servers, deal with slow service, or settle for mediocre food? I'm going to create the Uber of fine dining. His vision was ambitious. Lumina, a high-end restaurant where everything was controlled through a proprietary app. Customers would scan QR codes at their tables, browse a curated menu of molecular gastronomy dishes, place orders, and even pay, all without human interaction. The kitchen would be staffed with James Beard award-winning chefs, the interior designed by the same firm that did Google's headquarters. Marcus liquidated his investment portfolio, sold his Palo Alto penthouse, and poured every penny, $2.3 million, into making Lumina a reality. "This isn't just a restaurant," he explained to the local food critic during the pre-opening interview. "This is the future of dining. We're eliminating inefficiency, maximizing customer control, and delivering an experience that's never been seen before." The reporter, a woman in her 50s named Sarah, who had covered the San Francisco food scene for 2 decades, leaned forward. "Have you considered that some people actually enjoy interacting with servers? That part of dining out is the human connection?" Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that barely concealed condescension. "Sarah, that's old-school thinking. Our customer research shows that millennials and Gen Z want efficiency and customization. They don't want small talk. They want their food fast and perfect." What Marcus didn't mention was that his customer research consisted of surveying his tech-savvy friends and colleagues. He hadn't talked to a single person who actually lived in the Mission District neighborhood where Lumina would be located. Opening night arrived on a crisp October evening. Marcus stood at the entrance wearing his lucky navy suit, greeting the 50 VIP guests he had invited: investors, tech executives, food bloggers. The restaurant looked stunning. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulb chandeliers, sleek tablets embedded in custom walnut tables. "Welcome to the future," Marcus said, raising his glass of champagne. "Tonight you're experiencing Dining 2.0. But within 30 minutes, the cracks began to show. "Excuse me," called out Jennifer, a local tech investor. She was holding up her phone, frustration creeping into her voice. "The app keeps crashing when I try to order the salmon. It's probably just first-night jitters," Marcus replied, but his confident smile flickered. He quickly texted his development team. Across the room, David Martinez, the head chef Marcus had recruited from a Michelin-starred restaurant in Napa Valley, emerged from the kitchen with stress written across his face. "Marcus, we need to talk," David said, pulling him aside. "The orders are coming in too fast and too scattered. The kitchen can't keep up with random requests for modifications when we're trying to execute molecular gastronomy. We need to simplify the menu or hire more staff." "The menu is perfect," Marcus said firmly. "People want options. They want to customize. That's the whole point." "But Marcus, listen to me. David, I've got this under control. Trust the system." By the end of the evening, half the tables had received incorrect orders, the app had crashed twice, and 3 couples had walked out after waiting 90 minutes for appetizers. But Marcus, surrounded by a few tech friends who politely praised the innovative concept, convinced himself it was a successful launch. "Every revolutionary idea has growing pains," he told the small group remaining at closing time. "We'll smooth out these little glitches." But they weren't little glitches. Over the following weeks, the problems multiplied like a virus. Local food bloggers wrote scathing reviews. "Lumina prioritizes technology over taste," read one. "Cold food, complicated ordering, zero warmth," said another. The neighborhood residents, families, elderly couples, young professionals who wanted to unwind after work, found the app confusing and the atmosphere sterile. Marcus received a devastating Yelp review from a woman named Rosa. "Took my 78-year-old mother here for her birthday. She couldn't figure out the app, no one could help her, and we left hungry and embarrassed. This place has forgotten that restaurants are supposed to be about bringing people together." Instead of listening, Marcus doubled down. He hired a more expensive marketing firm. He added new features to the app. He organized tech meetups at the restaurant, trying to attract his target demographic. "The market just needs time to catch up to our innovation," he told David during one of their increasingly tense conversations. "Marcus, please," David pleaded. "I've been in this business for 15 years. The couple at table 7 yesterday, they're regulars at every restaurant on this block. They wanted to try us, but they couldn't figure out how to modify their order for her gluten allergy. They left frustrated. That's not innovation. That's alienation." "David, I appreciate your concern, but I didn't invest $2.3 million to run a conventional restaurant. We're disrupting an entire industry." David stared at him for a long moment. "Marcus, when was the last time you actually sat down and ate a meal here? Not standing in the kitchen tasting dishes, but actually sat at a table, used the app, experienced what our customers experience." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. He couldn't remember. By month 4, Lumina was bleeding money. The dining room, designed for 120 guests, averaged only 25 customers per night. Marcus had already burned through his marketing budget, and the critical reviews kept coming. His breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening in February. Marcus was in the kitchen, watching David and 2 line cooks prepare meals for a nearly empty dining room. Only 7 tables were occupied, and 3 of those were his own employees grabbing dinner. His phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. "Rent is late again. Need to discuss." Another buzz. His mother. "Honey, Dad and I want to help. Can we at least cover your rent this month?" Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He was 35 years old, had been featured in Forbes, had built 2 successful companies, and now he was 3 months behind on rent, borrowing money from his parents, and watching his dream restaurant die a slow, public death. "David," he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. The chef looked up from plating a dish that would go to one of their 7 customers. "What would you do? If this was your restaurant, what would you do?" David set down his knife and walked over. For the first time in months, Marcus's face showed vulnerability instead of stubborn certainty. "I'd start over," David said gently. "I'd admit that we got it wrong and I'd start over." But Marcus wasn't ready to hear that. Not yet. Instead, he spent the next 3 months frantically trying to save Lumina. He took out personal loans. He convinced 2 investors to inject more capital. He hired a crisis management firm. He even considered selling his car, the Tesla Model S that had been his symbol of success. Nothing worked. 8 months after opening night, Marcus stood in the empty dining room at 2 a.m., looking at the eviction notice taped to his door. The tablets were dark, the chairs stacked on tables, the dreams of revolutionizing dining reduced to overdue bills and broken promises. Lumina was finished, and so was Marcus. The next 2 years were the darkest of Marcus's life. He lost his savings, his house, his car. He moved in with his parents in their small Oakland apartment, sleeping on the same twin bed he'd had in high school. The man who once commanded boardrooms now stood in unemployment lines. But perhaps the hardest part wasn't the financial loss, it was the complete destruction of his identity. Marcus had built his entire sense of self around being the guy who had the answers, the visionary who could see what others couldn't. Now, he was just another cautionary tale of Silicon Valley hubris. He took the only job he could find, delivery driver for DoorDash. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was now working for the very type of food delivery company he had tried to compete with. Day after day, Marcus drove his mother's old Honda Civic through the same San Francisco neighborhoods where he had once pitched investors and given interviews about disrupting the restaurant industry. He delivered meals from successful restaurants to happy customers, watching through windows as families and friends gathered around tables, laughing, talking, connecting. The thing about rock bottom is that it strips away everything except the truth. And the truth Marcus began to see was uncomfortable. He started noticing things he had been too arrogant to see before. The way elderly customers lit up when servers remembered their usual orders. How couples lingered over meals, not because the food was perfect, but because someone had created a space for them to be together. The simple joy of a parent watching their child's face light up when a friendly server brought them a special dessert. Marcus realized he had been so focused on eliminating inefficiencies that he had eliminated the very thing that made dining out special: human connection. But the real turning point, the moment that changed everything, came on a cold Tuesday evening in March. Marcus was delivering Chinese takeout to a small apartment building in Chinatown. The address led him to a narrow staircase above a closed storefront. He climbed to the second floor and knocked on apartment 2B. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 70s wearing a faded apron over a simple dress. Her hair was silver, pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes held the kind of warmth that comes from decades of welcoming people. "You must be Marcus," she said, reading his name from the delivery app. "I'm Mrs. Chen. Please, come in for a moment." Marcus hesitated. "I just need to deliver the food and—" "Please," she insisted gently. "It's raining and you look tired. Just for a minute." Something in her voice made Marcus step inside. The apartment was small but immaculate, filled with the aroma of jasmine tea and old photographs covering every surface. "Sit," Mrs. Chen said, gesturing to a worn but comfortable chair. "Tea?" Marcus found himself nodding. As she prepared the tea, he noticed the photographs. A younger Mrs. Chen standing in front of a bustling restaurant, surrounded by family members and chef's whites. "That was my restaurant," she said, following his gaze. "Golden Dragon. We ran it for 32 years. Was?" Marcus asked. Mrs. Chen's hand stilled for a moment as she poured the tea. "We lost it in 2008. The recession. My husband and I, we thought we knew everything about running a restaurant. We had been successful for so long, we stopped listening to our customers. Stopped adapting. We kept raising prices, kept the same old menu, ignored the young families moving into the neighborhood who wanted different things." She handed Marcus a delicate cup of tea, the steam rising between them like a bridge. "We were so proud of our traditional way of doing things that we forgot the most important tradition of all. Serving people what they actually want, not what we think they should want." Marcus nearly dropped his cup. "What happened to you after you lost the restaurant?" "Oh, we struggled," Mrs. Chen said matter-of-factly. "My husband took a job washing dishes at the restaurant that replaced ours. I cleaned offices at night. We lost our house, moved in with our daughter. It was the hardest time of our lives." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and he truly meant it. Mrs. Chen smiled. "Don't be sorry. Losing the restaurant was the best thing that ever happened to us." Marcus looked at her in confusion. "You see, when we lost everything, we had to start over. But this time, we listened. We paid attention. My husband got a job at a small family restaurant, and instead of trying to change everything, he learned from them. He discovered that the young families in the neighborhood wanted healthy options for their children, that the elderly customers valued conversation as much as food, that busy professionals appreciated both efficiency and warmth." She took a sip of her tea, her eyes distant with memory. "After 2 years, the owner of that restaurant offered to make us partners. Not because we had money to invest, but because we had finally learned the most important ingredient in any successful restaurant." "Which is?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Humility," Mrs. Chen said simply. "The willingness to listen, to learn, to admit when you're wrong, and to start again." Marcus sat in that small apartment for 3 hours. Mrs. Chen told him about their new restaurant, a casual, family-friendly place that had become the heart of their community. She shared stories of customers who had become like family, of adapting their menu based on feedback, of hiring servers who genuinely cared about making people feel welcomed. "But the most important thing we learned," she said as Marcus prepared to leave, "is that failure isn't falling down. Failure is staying down." As Marcus walked down those narrow stairs and back into the rain, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of a drowning man, but the quiet confidence of someone who finally understood the lesson they needed to learn. Marcus didn't transform overnight. Real change never happens that way. But Mrs. Chen's words had planted a seed. And over the following weeks, that seed began to grow. He started small, really small. Using his mother's kitchen, Marcus began cooking simple meals and selling them to his DoorDash customers. Not molecular gastronomy or high-concept fusion, just good, honest food made with care. His first customer was a young mother who had ordered from him several times. When she complimented his delivery service, Marcus mentioned that he was also a chef. "Really?" she said, bouncing her toddler on her hip. "My daughter is so picky. I can never find healthy food she'll actually eat." "What is she like?" Marcus asked. That simple question, "What does she like?" became the foundation of his comeback. Marcus spent the next 6 months listening. He asked every customer about their preferences, their dietary restrictions, their family situations. He learned that the college students in the Mission District wanted affordable, healthy meals they could grab between classes, that the elderly residents preferred smaller portions but valued variety, that busy parents needed kid-friendly options that didn't sacrifice nutrition. Instead of trying to revolutionize the industry, Marcus focused on serving his community. With $3,000 saved from his delivery job and a small loan from his parents, Marcus bought a used food truck. He painted it simple white with black lettering. Marcus's Kitchen, made fresh, made simple. The menu was 1 page, 5 rotating entrees, 3 sides, 2 desserts. Everything was made to order, and everything could be customized based on dietary needs. But most importantly, Marcus was there, talking to every customer, learning their names, remembering their preferences. "What brings you here today?" became his signature greeting. Within 6 months, Marcus had a line of regular customers. The food truck became a gathering place in the neighborhood, where people would wait for their orders while chatting with neighbors and sharing recommendations. "You know what I love about this place?" said Sarah, the food critic who had interviewed him about Lumina 3 years earlier. She had become a regular customer without initially recognizing him. "It feels like the owner actually cares about what I want to eat." Marcus smiled, a genuine smile this time, not the condescending expression he had worn during their first meeting. "That's because I do care. What can I make for you today?" Today, 5 years after losing everything, Marcus runs a chain of 7 casual restaurants across the Bay Area, each one tailored to its specific neighborhood and community. His restaurants have generated over $15 million in revenue, but more importantly, they've become beloved gathering places in their communities. The Marcus of today is almost unrecognizable from the man who opened Lumina. He spends his mornings visiting his restaurants, not to check on profits or efficiency metrics, but to talk with customers and staff. He knows the names of regular customers, remembers their favorite orders, asks about their families. His restaurants do use technology, but it serves the human experience rather than replacing it. Customers can order through an app if they want, but they can also talk to servers who are trained to make recommendations and accommodate special requests. The kitchens are designed for both efficiency and flexibility, allowing chefs to quickly customize dishes based on individual preferences. "The difference between my first restaurant and these," Marcus told a group of business students last month, "isn't the concept or the funding or the location. It's that I finally learned to listen." But perhaps the most important part of Marcus's story is what he does every Tuesday evening. He closes his flagship restaurant early and hosts a free community dinner for elderly residents in the neighborhood. Mrs. Chen, now 82, is always there, sitting at the same corner table, welcoming new guests and sharing stories. "She saved my life," Marcus told me when I interviewed him for this story. "Not just my business, my life. She taught me that success isn't about proving you're right. It's about being willing to be wrong, to learn, and to serve something bigger than your own ego." So here's what I want you to remember from Marcus's story. We live in a world that celebrates the myth of the brilliant visionary who succeeds through pure determination and genius. But the truth is, the most successful people aren't those who are always right. They're those who are willing to be wrong and learn from it. Pride isn't just about arrogance or ego. Pride is about being so attached to our ideas, our plans, our vision of how things should be, that we stop seeing how things actually are. It's about talking instead of listening, assuming instead of asking, defending instead of adapting. Marcus lost $2.3 million, not because he wasn't smart or hardworking, but because he confused confidence with wisdom. He thought success meant having all the answers, when real success means asking the right questions. The most powerful question you can ask in any situation isn't, how can I prove I'm right? It's, what am I not seeing? Whether you're starting a business, building a relationship, raising children, or pursuing any dream, remember that your customers, your partners, your family, they're not obstacles to your vision. They're collaborators in creating something better than what you could build alone. Failure isn't falling down. Failure is staying down. But humility? Humility is what helps you get back up, stronger and wiser than before. The next time you find yourself convinced that you have all the answers, think about Marcus. Think about Mrs. Chen. Think about the power of a simple question. What do you need? Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is listen. Thank you for joining me for another story here on The Turning Point. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about a time when pride got in your way, or when listening changed everything for you. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next story.